Are you in perimenopause? Are the symptoms like weight gain, fatigue, weird periods, are the things that you're experiencing physically, does that have something to do with your hormones? Today, I'm going to share with you the signs and symptoms to help you figure out today, after listening to this episode of The Chalene Show, if you are in perimenopause or maybe even menopause or postmenopausal. We're going to break it all down for you today in honor of Menopause Month. I'm so excited to address this topic because I wish someone had shared these things with me when I was going through this. Thanks for joining me. My name is Chalene Johnson, and you are listening or watching, if you're on YouTube, The Chalene Show. And today we are talking about women's hormone health and specifically perimenopause. Now, first, I want to just give you some quick definitions. What is menopause? Menopause is one day. It's the day that you count, the day that you can say, this is my menopause. It's when you've gone 365 days with no period. Then you can officially say, I have reached menopause. On the 367th day, everything beyond that, you are postmenopausal. So technically, I am postmenopausal, but you are in menopause once you've gone a full year without a period. Now, that means if you go 11 months and in the 11th month, you get your cycle back, you start again 12 months without a cycle. And now you know what postmenopause is as well. But what is perimenopause? Perimenopause is what we should be talking about because everybody talks about menopause and no one really is talking about perimenopause, not in the way that we should. And this is when we need information because your experience in menopause will change significantly based on what it is you do during perimenopause. But how do you know you're in perimenopause? You might be surprised to know that very few medical schools teach beyond 5 hours of curriculum related to women's hormone health as they enter menopause. So the perimenopausal and menopausal and postmenopausal women, less than 5 hours devoted to 50% of the population and where we will spend the second half of our lives. Oh, great. They don't know much. So we can't really blame our doctors. I think the blame starts squarely on the medical schools. But it's important for you to know that because when you go and talk to your doctor, the likelihood that they're really going to be up to date is very low. And I don't blame the medical community because think about all the things that they have to be experts in. It's really a remarkable feat that they're able to save as many people as they do. They're only human. So then what recourse do you have? Unfortunately, what that means is it's really, really important that we educate ourselves and of course that we demand change. You know, you've got to sign the petitions when they come around. You got to vote on those matters that mean the most to women and our health and our hormones and research. And most importantly, you've got to tune in to the experts, specifically the female doctors who specialize in endocrinology, hormone health, and women's longevity. So when it comes to hormones, let's talk about perimenopause. That's what you're here for, right? You want to know, like, okay, how do I know if I'm in perimenopause? Is there a test I can take? And while there is some new emerging science, there's nothing yet that's proven to definitively tell us that you are in perimenopause. But there is some hormone and blood work that will give your clinician a really good sense of like where you are in terms of your hormonal health. I mean, because let's face it, fertility is fleeting. And unfortunately, we are the most fertile and our hormones are most ample and supple when we're really young, probably too young to be raising a family. So after that point at which you're the most fertile, slowly all of our hormones are in decline. Specifically for women, it is estrogen and progesterone that you're going to experience the most side effects from. So then how do we know if you're in perimenopause? Well, let's define perimenopause. It is simply that stage before menopause when your hormones are in decline. For some women, it is 2 to 5 years before menopause. For others, it's as many as 10 years before menopause. So you might experience perimenopausal symptoms as early as your mid 30s. Most women by their early 40s are in full-blown perimenopause. It's not an automatic, but you can ask your mom, like when she went through menopause, or your grandma, or your father's mom. You know, those are some good indicators, but it doesn't necessarily mean that's when you're going to go through menopause. There are lots of lifestyle things that we can do that delay the onset of menopause. One of them is to minimize our consumption of alcohol. But I digress. Back to perimenopause. So it's this big stage, right? So then how do I know if these weird things that I'm experiencing, if this is perimenopause? Well, first we should probably talk about what some of those symptoms are. The most common of them is having irregular periods. So if you've been a pretty regular person naturally, like not meaning you're regular because you're on birth control, but like you naturally you're pretty regular, you know how many days your cycle is, how many days between the start and end of your cycle, and then suddenly you start experiencing like longer periods in general, like instead of it being lasting 5 days, it lasts 7 days or it lasts 2 days. Instead of it being like moderate heavy, all of a sudden it's like almost nothing. You're barely spotting. It is experiencing like suddenly you've never had really terrible cramps and now you are having terrible cramps, or you've always had cramps and now you're not having any cramps. Like it's just things have become like, well, that's weird. That's kind of irregular. That's probably the most common symptom. At least it's the most commonly reported symptom. And I think that is because, now hear me very clearly, I think that most women don't even realize that they're experiencing some of these symptoms because they come on so slow, they're subtle, and they're inconsistent. Some of the symptoms that I experienced, I would have this like weird thing, and then I would think, okay, if this continues, I'm going to tell my doctor about it. And then it would go away, and I'd literally forget about it. And then I would have a new symptom, and I'd be like, oh, I'm going to tell my doctor about that. And then it would go away, and then it would come back. So I had this influx of strange symptoms, and I never put two and two together. Every time I would meet with my doctor, they would say, do you have any, symptoms? I'd be like, no, not really. But now that I'm in menopause and I look back on the list of the symptoms that are associated with perimenopause, I'm like, oh my God, I had that one and 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 that. Like I wish I had known. Okay, so let's cover that broad list, shall we? I'm going to go through these quickly. In addition to irregular periods, it's also low energy, weight gain, especially weight gain in weird places, anxiety, depression, itchy inner ear, regular sleep disturbances, exhaustion, migraines, low level nausea, joint pain, overall aches and fatigue, acne, brain fog, strange bladder or urinary issues, like suddenly you can't sneeze without crossing your legs, a change in vaginal tissues, vaginal dryness, dry hair, thinning hair, hot flashes, frozen shoulder, more UTIs, ADHD-like symptoms, irregular heartbeat, decreased libido, changes to your skin texture and tone, a weird odor. Like, and I just mean like your body smells different, which may relate to increased perspiration or maybe not. Some people have decreased perspiration. Like you used to always sweat a lot and now you just get hot, but you don't sweat. Changes to your breast size, memory lapses, increased sensitivity to heat, mood swings, sensitivity to noise and sounds that you didn't experience before, increased facial hair or hair in places you don't want hair, changes in appetite, burning tongue sensation, electric shock sensations, sensitivity to your gums like bleeding gums, tinnitus, which is like ringing in the ears, changes to your digestion like bloating, indigestion, constipation, and irritable bowels, blurred vision, dry eyes, episodes of dizziness, and tingling extremities. And that's just to name some of the more commonly known symptoms. So my recommendation to you is do this. Like I don't ever want to create an episode where it's like, here's this information and what are you supposed to do with it? Here's what I want you to do with it. First of all, take a screenshot. Here's the entire list. I'm going to put it up on the screen if you're watching on YouTube, and I want you to take a screenshot of that. Okay. And I want you to save it. I want you to heart it and save it to your favorites folder in your phone. And anytime you have one of these symptoms, I want you to record the date and put it on your calendar or put it in a separate note. Because again, your hormones during this period of time are kind of like a roller coaster. They're going to be high one day and low the next, which is part of the reason why many in the medical community don't believe in testing your hormones to actually see if you are in perimenopause. And we'll talk about how you can know for sure or with some degree of certainty in just a moment. But the best resource for you is you. These symptoms, some of them are so minor, and you're going to actually forget that they relate to perimenopause, and you're going to forget to record them, and you're going to forget to tell your doctor when you have, 2 minutes with them when they run in the room. So put them in a separate note and keep track of them. Make note of when it happened in your cycle and how often they're happening, because these things are really important once you find a clinician who's actually going to listen to you. And that's my next suggestion, is to just be aware of these symptoms and to know that they are going to be in flux while you're in that perimenopausal state. The most important thing you can do is research, because most, as I mentioned, medical professionals they're not up to date in the latest research. Unfortunately, it is more common than not that clinicians are going to be operating according to the Women's Health Initiative from 2002, wherein a study that has since been walked back and proven and debunked that women should avoid hormone replacement therapy. Well, that became front page news. It was like the lead story on the news. Every doctor, every woman was so afraid that if she did hormone replacement therapy, especially women that were even doing it, that they were going to increase their risk of breast cancer, heart disease, stroke, blood clots, etc. So for what 25 plus years now, women have been afraid of hormone replacement therapy. We've got much updated science, and I'm happy to provide links to you below this episode that you can print out and share with your physician or your clinician if they're not up to date. But my recommendation would be just to find someone who actually is, and this is their sole practice, like someone who practices endocrinology or someone whose sole focus is treating women's health and hormones and helping us to live powerfully as we age. We can't expect our GP to be experts in everything. We just can't. So unfortunately, that means it's our responsibility to find someone who will actually listen. Because in order to get a proper diagnosis, in order to get the support that you need, which in many instances is going to be hormone replacement therapies, you need the information. You need the right information. You don't need to be scared by a clinician who's working off of outdated information. Because what we now know, based on the really credible, sound research paper after research after published article, is that the younger a woman starts on hormone replacement therapies, the better. The better in terms of her symptoms, and she reduces her risk of all-cause mortality. What do I mean when I say all-cause mortality? Basically, what I'm saying is if you can get on hormone replacement therapies earlier than later, and it's never too late, ladies, even if you're in your 70s, it's not too late for certain therapies. But the earlier you can start, the better, and the less likely you are to die from any disease that's preventable. That's what we mean when we say all cause mortality. Like any disease that's preventable, we can reduce your risk of dying from those things by making sure that you have the hormones that you once had. We're not talking about turning you into a superhuman. I know there's these misconceptions that it's supplementing something you don't have. No, you produce testosterone and progesterone and estrogen and a lot of other hormones that are, when they are in decline, those hormones serve a purpose. They keep us alive. They keep our bones strong. They keep our hair nice and clean and not clean. They keep wouldn't that be great? No, but they keep our hair nice and strong and shiny and growing and thick. It's the things that help us with our vision. It's every function of your body is controlled by hormones. So when hormones leave the building, what are you supposed to do? Like, okay, I guess I'll go off in the corner and die now. I guess I'll live a subpar life. No, you deserve you deserve to step into the second part of your life. Like now you're older and wiser. You don't even have time for the BS anymore. Like things are so good, right? So the last thing you deserve is a body that's achy and gaining weight and you're uncomfortable in your own skin and you just feel like you're broken. You don't deserve that. No, you've survived to this point, girl. Girl, we need you to be in optimal health. Like you need to feel and like believe that you are amazing because you are. And I mean, don't even get me started on the likelihood that you are going to be offered an SSRI, like an antidepressant, when you go to your doctor and share with them some of the perimenopausal symptoms that you're experiencing. The likelihood is very high. It is very likely, in fact, one recent study found that 18% of women will go to their doctor more than 6 times before their doctor recognizes that the symptoms that they're complaining of are related to perimenopause and menopause. The average woman will be misdiagnosed. She will have her symptoms misdiagnosed for 3 years before a doctor ever tests and realizes, oh, wait, this relates to your hormones, including, do we even mention osteopenia and osteoporosis, like the weakening of your bones? I don't even know if we put that in that list. Let's put that list up again and make sure that we've added it in case we didn't. That's related to our hormones. So if you want strong bones, if you want muscles, if you want to have that vitality that you had when you were younger, but now you're older and wiser, right? Like you don't want to be your 30-year-old self again, right? Like you know so much now. And like other people's opinion doesn't matter to you anymore. And you probably got more money and you probably have more time and you've got so much more wisdom. So, like, why wouldn't you want to have the machine to move that all around? You know what I'm saying? And there's so many things you can do in terms of lifestyle. So let's put aside hormone replacement therapies for just a moment. There's so many ways you can naturally boost your hormones that relate to lifestyle. And frankly, any clinician that doesn't start with lifestyle is doing you a disservice because lifestyle impacts your hormones unlike anything else. I've done quite a few episodes talking about all the things you can do in terms of your lifestyle. Some of them are common sense, but let's just go through them just in case you're unaware. I want to start with the biggest one. The one you're going to roll your eyes. You're going to hate this one, but I wish someone had told me when I was perimenopausal. I mean, I wish I'd known. Now, you know, I don't think it's any newsflash that alcohol isn't great for us. But if you don't have a drinking problem, you're like, what's the big deal? I exercise, I eat right, I get enough sleep. What's the big deal if I have, if I'm a social drinker, if I drink on occasion? Well, it is a really big deal when you start to have a decline in your hormones. Drinking alcohol makes your gut permeable, which means that you're not going to absorb the nutrients that you need just to regulate your hormones. It exacerbates, are you ready for this? It exacerbates every single commonly known symptom of perimenopause. I didn't know that. No doctor ever told me that. They would ask, like, how often do you drink? And I would tell them, whatever my social alcohol consumption was. And they'd be like, okay. They never said, before we try hormone replacement therapy, why don't you just stop drinking? Makes a huge difference. Huge difference. The other thing that we're always worried about as we're aging is how we look, right? Like we want youthful skin and we want youthful hair and all the things. Nothing ages you like alcohol. I mean, I'm not going to beat a dead horse because I know people just like don't want to hear that. And I know that because I didn't want to hear it until I heard it and then I couldn't unhear it. So I want to link to an episode that I did shortly after I discovered all of these things and the impact that it was having on my health. So I'm going to link to that. You can find it below in the show description, or if you're watching on YouTube, you can check it out. But let's talk about some other lifestyle things. Supplements. Because our hormones are in decline, that also means things like serotonin and magnesium, melatonin, things that help us to regulate our mood, to feel more relaxed, and to get better sleep. All of these things are in decline, and we can boost all of those things by lifestyle, right? So getting out in the morning and getting morning sunshine, walking, engaging in exercise that actually feels rejuvenating versus all the pounding exercises that a lot of us did in our 20s and 30s and maybe even into our 40s. Like the pounding exercises that we thought, well, if I'm going to be able to maintain my weight, if I want to look good, I've got to like pound my body into submission. And there's a lot of research to support, not for everyone. So anything that I say, there's always exceptions. And so you know your body better than anyone. But I'm just here to tell you, like, if you've been a runner all your life and now suddenly you're just packing on the pounds and you're like, nothing is changing, and now I'm even running more miles, but I feel more beat up and my joints hurt and I'm packing on the weight, change up your workout. I'm telling you, what you're doing might be causing systemic inflammation. And what we know about inflammation is this: it makes the body hold on to water, i.e., weight. It makes our bodies produce more cortisol. Cortisol tells our body, hey, we're under attack here. We are stressed out. We need to protect. How about we store some fat around the midsection? Hey, thanks. It's that midlife thickness. I remember when I was in perimenopause. I'm not saying I was, obese or anything, but what I was is I didn't feel like myself. And I think we underestimate what that does to us mentally as women. Let's get deep for a second. We have been conditioned all of our lives that like your body, your image, all of that is like everything. Every TV ad that you see, cover of magazines, Instagram, social media, like it's thinner, taller, younger, right? And so all of a sudden you enter perimenopause and you're like, okay, what is going on? I'm eating less. I'm going to exercise more. So you're exercising more, you're eating less, and you're like, why is my face round? Why am I packing the pounds on in my midsection? You just have this like extra layer of fluff. I'm not saying it's going to depress you, but I just don't know too many women that are excited about that. I certainly wasn't, and I remember thinking like, "Okay, I feel healthy, but I don't like the way my body feels, like, this doesn't feel like my body." Even though I felt good, mentally, I just was like, "This is also frustrating." You know what I mean? And I thought I was doing all of the things. But here's what you need to know about this stage of your life, perimenopause through menopause. Your margin for error is like every year gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller until it's so small, like you can't mess up. And what do I mean by that? I mean, you got to get your exercise right, your sleep, your stress, your supplements, your hormones. So it's those 5 things. And the reason why I listed hormones last is because these 4 have a major impact on your hormones. So oftentimes we start with hormone replacement therapy and we think like that's going to be the magic bullet. Well, in that photo where I'm definitely fluffier, I was taking hormone replacement therapies. I was on a nice protocol, but it didn't impact my weight because I hadn't turned the dial on my exercise. I was still doing what I used to do. I was still doing high intensity. I was still doing a lot of cardio. I was still not giving my body adequate rest and recovery. So I started walking. And just focusing on lifting weights. I stopped restricting food. I started just and stopped worrying about macros. I'm not saying this is going to work for you. I'm just telling you what I did. And I started just focusing on a big portion of protein and then fiber, greens, fresh greens, unprocessed. I started focusing on my stress. And, I'm kind of like going through this list very quickly, assuming that you've seen some of my other episodes where I've broken this down in greater detail. But that's how I lost the weight. I lost like probably 10 pounds of extra fluff. And, the average person might not be able to tell, but you can tell, your body. And when you put on a certain skirt or a certain pair of pants and you're like, did the dry cleaner shrink this? Or is this me? And then you don't know why, but it's like there in the back of your head, putting you in a bad mood all day, and you can't figure out like why you're like snipping at other people. And it's sometimes that's what it is. Perimenopause is something we dismiss. And more often than not, when you go to talk to your doctor, they've got just minutes, right? Because if it's, a doctor that's covered by your insurance, unfortunately, they are in a system where they've got just minutes to spend with you, and they are trying to rule out other diseases that it could be. They want to make sure it's like, nothing that's abnormal. And guess what is normal? Menopause and perimenopause. Every single woman is going to go through, without exception, menopause. Like we're all going to go through it. And so my recommendation to you is now you know all these symptoms. So start making those modifications to your lifestyle now. Number 1. Number 2, do not be afraid to find a clinician who will actually listen. And that's going to require someone who like this is their focus, because it does take some work on the part of the clinician. They have to be willing to piece this mystery together to figure out where you are. And hopefully, perhaps they will even test your hormone levels. Sometimes it's hard to get a doctor to do that unless you're seeing someone who, again, specializes in hormone health. If you don't have someone in your area, here's my recommendations. Number 1, ask your go-to girlfriend. You know the one. She like knows everything, like she's ahead of the curve, and she probably already has one. Ask her about that. She looks amazing. She's got somebody. Ask her. She knows. And because you have to find somebody in your state who can treat you in your state. You could of course go to Google and Yelp, but I don't know. It's questionable. Sometimes the reviews are questionable. And for those of you who you've tried all those things and you still can't find somebody that's relatively close or that accepts insurance, because that's another big problem. Here's another big problem is a lot of those doctors who do unfortunately specialize in this type of care, they don't accept insurance because insurance doesn't cover a lot of it, you know, until that changes. Like we need to change that. But a lot of these doctors, they're like, insurance won't cover it. So then I'm battling with this patient who's like, wait, why is the insurance not covering it? And the doctor has to spend so much time just dealing with administrative red tape. So another option you might want to consider is a telehealth company that specializes in Women's Hormone Health. I've mentioned them several times on the show before. They're now a show sponsor. They're a show sponsor because I reached out to them and asked them to be a show sponsor after using them. It's called Midi Health. And this is a company founded by women, and they specialize in treating women. And they can help you with your needs no matter what state you're in. I used them recently because I couldn't get into my doctor quick enough, and I wanted to try estrogen cream under my eyes. I swear, I know I'm going to do an episode on all of that because it's crazy remarkable. And then I was so impressed, I recommended several of the gals on my staff, and they've used Midi and they loved it. And so we reached out to Midi and said, hey, like our audience, they need you. Because that's probably the number one comment, that people have this problem and I haven't been able to provide them a solution. So anyways, this is not intended to be an ad for Midi, but like, hello, we're talking about something like this could really help you. So you can check them out by going to chalene.com/Midi, MIDI. I'd love to know about your experience. Again, they work with most insurance. I know not all. And even if you do find somebody in your area or a clinician at Midi or whatever it is, just know this: doctors are humans, clinicians are humans, and anyone that you treat with, whether it's, a personal trainer or your dentist or, the gal who does your hair, like they're a human. And so sometimes you have to find somebody new until you get the right fit, like someone who's like, okay, that's the right fit. So don't judge your clinic or Midi or anyone else like based on like one, or even just, well, I tried. Well, this is not easy. You might have to try a couple of different people until you find the right fit. But once you find the right fit, it is like you are dialed in and you're going to feel amazing. But remember, it's not just your hormones, it is your exercise. Focus on things, in my opinion, not all. Most women in this stage should be focusing on zone 2 cardio and strength training. And when I say strength training, I mean heavy strength training. None of this light weights, way too many repetitions. I'm talking heavy weights that put muscles on your body and density in your bones. We want bone density. Do you know that 50% of people, specifically women who have a hip fracture, will die not from the hip fracture, but from complications related to being in bed with a hip fracture? You don't you, you don't want to break a hip when you fall. You need strong bones. And to have strong bones, you need the right diet. So we need to reduce the amount of processed foods that we're eating. We've got to stop drinking. I know. We've been lied to. But alcohol is a poison, and it's the worst possible thing that you can consume if you're a perimenopausal, menopausal woman. If you're struggling with your hormones and your doctor has not addressed alcohol, then they're just part of the problem, frankly. Or they know it's just most people aren't going to listen. You've also got to focus on your sleep. I know that's hard, but there are some hygiene things that we can be doing for your sleep. I've not done a sleep episode in a long time. I've got some things, the way that I set up my bedroom at night, that really, really helps me sleep. And I'm working on like this new habit that my doctor recommended that I think is really, really going to help my sleep. And of course, there's some supplements you can take for your sleep, natural supplements. So if you want me to do like a whole episode just devoted to our sleep, drop a comment below and let me know, because it's probably long overdue. All right, so that's where we're at. Those are your symptoms related to perimenopause. Can you take a test? Yes, you can. They can look at some of your hormone levels, specifically estrogen, and also your FSH follicles to see, okay, where are they? And that'll give them some indication that we're heading towards menopause. But do you really need a test? Like if you're having the symptoms, what a test will do, hopefully, is you can see where your hormone levels are and that you can find out, do I need a little bit of progesterone and estrogen? Remember, those two things go together. We've got to make sure everything's in balance. You can't just do one. Be very careful who it is you're treating with. That's why when people ask me, like, Chalene, what hormones are you on? Like, can you tell me all of your levels? I'm like, why? That won't help you. Like, everyone's different. So you have to know what your baseline is. I personally, and this might be excessive, but I have mine tested every 3 to 6 months just because I want to know. And I adjust them. So the last time I answered that question, it would be different from what I'm doing now. I just had my blood work done 9 days ago. I haven't seen the results yet, but I'm curious to see what my hormone levels look like. The thing at now that I'm menopausal, postmenopausal, that I'm always keeping an eye on is my cortisol, because you can't outrun the fat that comes with cortisol. Like, you gotta get your cortisol levels down. So I'm really curious to see what my cortisol levels look like. I encourage you to be an advocate for yourself. If you need help, if you need support, if you need guidance, check out Phase It Up. That's the program that I created for us. I'm not the doctor expert. but I know how to find them. And I know how to vet the ones that actually are up to date. And I knew that we needed like one place where we could all hang out and we could like get real answers and the workouts. I've created the workouts. I've also created a huge array of recipes. When I say not me creating the recipes, I've hired people who can cook because your girl cannot cook. Who are we kidding? Yeah, I can put things in a bowl. But I've curated like the place to go for perimenopausal and menopausal women who want to age powerfully. Like this menopause is not a bad thing. It's such a good thing. It's like the after party. We want to change the reputation of menopause. It can be amazing if you have the right tools and that starts with having the right information. So if that's what you need, plus the support, the workouts, the meal plans, a diet to follow if you need that, the accountability. If you need help to quit drinking, if you any to start getting in more steps, all those things, you can find them at Phase It Up. Hey, I just want to be a source of knowledge for you and share those things that I've been through in hopes that I can make things a little bit easier for you. It means a lot to me that you're spending this time with me because it's the most valuable thing that you have. So thank you. I love you. I mean it. And I'll talk to you soon.